Before the flood began, forbidden ancient texts claim something terrifying had already entered Noah's Ark. Not 8 souls, but 9. And the hidden passenger was never meant to survive. What if the flood did not erase every trace of the darkness that corrupted the ancient world? The Bible names Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives 8 people saved from judgment. But apocryphal and Gnostic traditions speak of another presence concealed inside the ark. Some called it the dark passenger. Others described it as an uninvited shadow hidden among the animals. Genesis 6-4 says, "There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that." That final phrase raises a terrifying question. If the flood destroyed the corrupted world, how did the Nephilim appear again after the waters receded? Ancient Jewish traditions connected to the Dead Sea Scrolls suggest that one of the fallen beings may have survived through deception. Some stories claim it disguised itself among the animals before the ark was sealed. Others link it to the same rebellious force symbolized by the serpent in Eden. The Book of Enoch says the Watchers descended upon Mount Hermon and spread forbidden knowledge across the earth: warfare, sorcery, astrology, and corruption. Genesis 6-5 declares, "And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth." The flood became a judgment against a world that had crossed forbidden boundaries. Yet some hidden traditions insist the corruption was never fully destroyed. The Gnostic text, The Secret Apocalypse of John, hints that Noah brought more into the ark than he realized. That single line has disturbed theologians for centuries. In ancient mystical thought, the ark was not only a vessel of salvation, but a reflection of the entire human condition, light and darkness, carried together into the new world. And if those ancient warnings were true, then the flood did not end the ancient rebellion at all. What Noah carried through the waters may have followed humanity into the new world itself. But the deeper the ancient texts go, the darker the mystery becomes. Some traditions claim the hidden passenger was not a surviving Nephilim at all, but something far older than the giants themselves. If true, then Noah's Ark carried more than life through the flood. It carried the continuing presence of temptation into the new world. Certain Kabbalistic writings speak of Samael, the angel of death, moving unseen within the ark. Other traditions point to Azazel, the fallen watcher described in the Book of Enoch as the one who taught humanity warfare, weapons, and corruption. Enoch says these fallen beings revealed forbidden knowledge that changed the earth forever. And some of the most extreme interpretations identify the dark passenger as the adversary himself, hidden in animal form among the creatures saved from destruction. That raises a disturbing question. Why would evil be allowed to survive after divine judgment? Scripture repeatedly shows humanity being given a choice between obedience and rebellion. In Genesis, Adam and Eve faced temptation in Eden. In Deuteronomy 30-19, God declares, "I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore, choose life." Without a real choice, obedience would mean nothing. According to these hidden traditions, the flood destroyed the violence of the old world, but not the possibility of corruption itself. The Nephilim perished, yet the influence behind them remained active. The ark became more than a vessel of survival. It became a picture of humanity itself, light and darkness carried together into a world beginning again. And if something truly survived inside the ark, then the flood may not have ended the ancient rebellion at all. It may only have delayed it. Genesis describes the ark with exact measurements: 300 cubits long, 50 cubits wide, and 30 cubits high. Inside were 3 levels filled with animals, supplies, and the family chosen to survive the destruction of the old world. But according to ancient apocryphal traditions, Noah later discovered parts of the ark he never remembered building. Some writings describe hidden spaces between the gopher wood walls, narrow chambers that appeared empty after the flood, as if something had once been concealed there. The Book of Jubilees speaks of strange marks found on the upper level of the ark, tracks too large and unnatural to belong to any known animal. Ancient Ethiopian traditions go even further. They claim Noah heard voices during the nights of the flood, whispers echoing through the wooden corridors while the waters covered the earth. His sons questioned the sounds, but Noah dismissed them as the storm striking the ark. Yet deep inside, he feared something else was moving in the darkness. One of the most chilling accounts appears in the Armenian history of the patriarchs. It describes Noah awakening during the flood and seeing a shadowy figure standing silently at the end of the third-floor passageway, motionless, watching him. When Noah raised a lamp, the figure vanished instantly, leaving behind only a strange burning odor in the air. The next morning, several small animals were found lifeless without any visible explanation. According to these traditions, the dark passenger remained hidden during the journey, feeding quietly while avoiding the humans and the creatures needed to restore life after the flood. And if these accounts preserved even a fragment of truth, then Noah was never truly alone inside the ark. Something else survived the waters with him, waiting for the world to begin again. Ancient apocryphal writings claim that as the flood approached, the fallen angels desperately attempted to reach the ark before the doors were sealed. The Apocalypse of Abraham describes guardian angels standing watch over the entrance under the command of the Most High, preventing corrupted beings from entering the vessel of salvation. But according to these traditions, one of them succeeded before the floodwaters ever began. The texts speak of a fallen being far more cunning than the others, one that entered the ark weeks earlier without detection. Instead of arriving in its true form, it allegedly abandoned its celestial appearance and concealed itself within the body of an animal already chosen for preservation. That detail is what makes the story so unsettling. Genesis says the animals entered the ark according to God's command. 2 of every sort shalt thou bring into the ark, to keep them alive with thee. If the hidden entity had fully taken the form of a living creature, then it would have passed through the doors unnoticed among the rest. Some traditions compare this deception to the serpent in Eden, a being that used another form to approach humanity from within creation itself. The corruption of the ancient world may not have forced its way onto the ark. It may have entered quietly, disguised as something harmless, waiting in silence while the flood erased the world outside. As the floodwaters began to retreat and the ark rested upon the mountains of Ararat, the atmosphere inside suddenly changed. The animals that had remained calm through months of darkness became restless and terrified. Ancient traditions claim they sensed something awakening among them. Noah believed the creatures were reacting to solid ground returning beneath them. But apocryphal writings describe a far more unsettling explanation. The hidden passenger, silent throughout the flood, was beginning to recover its true nature. Genesis records that Noah first released a raven after the rain had ended, but some ancient interpretations give that moment a darker meaning. Instead of flying away immediately, the raven circled above the ark again and again, almost as if it were watching the vessel, waiting for something to emerge. Later, Noah released the dove, and when it returned carrying the olive leaf, he knew the earth was becoming habitable again. Yet, according to certain Gnostic traditions, something else left the ark that same day, unnoticed among the animals. The texts describe a shadow-like presence slipping silently toward the forests of Ararat, while Noah's family focused on rebuilding life after the flood. And with it came the forbidden knowledge once spread before the destruction of the ancient world, knowledge linked in the Book of Enoch to the fallen watchers. Warfare, hidden arts, and corrupt wisdom that changed humanity before the flood. The waters had erased the world of the Nephilim. But according to these traditions, the influence behind them survived the ark itself. And if that influence truly escaped into the new world, then the story of the flood was not the end of the rebellion. It was only the beginning of what came after. Generations after the flood, the mystery returned in a way that terrified entire nations. Genesis 6-4 declares, "There were giants in the earth in those days, and also after that." Those final words became a haunting problem for every reader of Scripture. If the flood erased the corrupted world of the Nephilim, why did giant clans appear again in Canaan during the days of Moses? Some ancient traditions claim the rebellion happened a second time, But apocryphal writings point towards something even darker. They suggest the corruption never fully disappeared because a hidden remnant survived aboard the Ark itself. Not through open conquest, but through preserved forbidden knowledge passed silently into the new world. That possibility changes the entire meaning of the post-flood world. Numbers 13:33 says, "And there we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, which come of the giants." The spies of Israel believed they were looking at echoes of the ancient world reborn after judgment. The fear they described was not ordinary fear of war. It was the terror of seeing something they thought God had already destroyed forever. And the pattern does not stop with the Bible. Mesopotamian legends speak of Utnapishtim, preserving traces of primordial chaos after the Great Flood. Norse traditions describe Loki surviving destruction to appear again in the renewed world. Hindu accounts tell of cosmic serpents enduring beyond catastrophe, different civilizations, different continents. Yet the same warning appears again and again. After every great judgment, something always remains behind. The deeper these stories are compared, the more unsettling the pattern becomes. Flood, survival, return, as if humanity has carried the memory of the same shadow since the beginning of civilization itself. No matter how many civilizations collapse, the ancient stories all repeat the same warning. Evil is never completely erased. Legends across the world speak of deceivers and hidden forces that survive every catastrophe, waiting for the next age to begin again. In many traditions, these beings are not simply monsters, but symbols of corruption that continues moving through human history long after judgment falls. Genesis 6-5 declares, "And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth." Yet even after the flood, humanity quickly returned to violence, rebellion, and idolatry. That pattern led many ancient writers to believe the corruption behind the Nephilim had never fully disappeared. It had only gone silent. The Book of Enoch describes 200 fallen angels descending upon Mount Hermon. These watchers crossed the boundary between heaven and earth, taking human wives and producing the Nephilim. Among them was Azazel, the figure blamed for teaching mankind warfare and forbidden knowledge. Forbidden teachings, hidden knowledge, astrology, and secret practices spread through the world until civilization itself became corrupted from within. And this is where the mystery becomes darker. The danger was never only the giants themselves, it was the knowledge they carried. Knowledge powerful enough to reshape nations, corrupt kingdoms, and pull humanity away from the order established in Genesis. That is why so many ancient traditions feared the survival of the Dark Passenger. Because if even a fragment endured after the flood, then the rebellion of the ancient world did not truly end on the waters of Noah's Ark. It simply entered history under a different form. Genesis 6-5 says, "And God saw that the wickedness of man was great in the earth." The flood came as judgment against a world consumed by corruption. But the Book of Enoch expands the story even further, describing fallen angels being bound in darkness before the waters covered the earth. According to these ancient writings, the watchers were imprisoned until the final judgment, sealed away by divine command. But that raises a terrifying question. If the fallen angels were already chained, how could traces of their influence survive after the flood? Some ancient mystical traditions suggest the answer was not escape through power, but through concealment. Certain Kabbalistic interpretations claim one of the rebellious beings avoided destruction by attaching itself completely to the physical world before the judgment was completed. Instead of appearing in celestial form, it hid itself among the living creatures entering the ark. That possibility transforms the entire mystery of the ninth passenger. The danger was not brute force like the giant Og mentioned in Jewish Haggadah traditions, who supposedly survived outside the ark through sheer size and endurance. This presence survived through deception, silence, and camouflage. And that pattern echoes throughout Scripture itself. In Genesis, the serpent does not conquer through strength. It enters quietly, speaks subtly, and corrupts from within. The same strategy appears again in these forbidden traditions surrounding Noah's Ark. By the time the floodwaters covered the earth, the corruption of the ancient world may not have vanished completely. According to these texts, part of it was already hidden inside the vessel meant to preserve life itself. For 150 days, the ark drifted alone above a world that had vanished beneath the waters. Genesis 7:24 says, "And the waters prevailed upon the earth 150 days." Inside that massive vessel were 8 survivors, countless animals, and according to forbidden traditions, a hidden presence never meant to survive the judgment. Ancient texts describe strange moments during the darkest nights of the flood. Noah reportedly sensed movement in places where no animals should have been. Shadows lingered too long in the corridors of the ark. His sons, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, spoke of disturbing dreams filled with whispers about fallen kingdoms and coming chaos. Noah tried to calm them, blaming fear and isolation, but some traditions claim the patriarch himself became deeply troubled. The Testament of Noah records a mysterious answer given during his prayers. "What must remain will remain for balance," a sentence so cryptic that later generations debated its meaning for centuries. And perhaps that explains one of the strangest moments after the flood. Genesis 9:21 says, "And he drank of the wine and was drunken." Some ancient interpreters believed Noah carried psychological scars from whatever he experienced inside the ark during those endless months surrounded by darkness and death. Because according to these hidden traditions, the flood did not simply destroy the old world. For 150 days, good and evil existed together inside a single vessel, floating over the ruins of humanity. And when the waters finally receded, both would step back into the world again. When the ark finally came to rest upon the mountains of Ararat, the world began again, but according to ancient traditions, something from the old world walked out with it. Not merely a survivor, but a hidden legacy carrying the memory of corruption that existed before the flood ever began. Generations later, that shadow seems to appear again in Scripture. Numbers 13:33 records the terrifying report of the spies in Canaan. "We saw their giants, the sons of Anak, the race of the Nephilim, and we were like grasshoppers in our own sight." The flood was supposed to erase the giants forever, yet the same fear, the same bloodlines, and the same mystery returned centuries later. That is why many apocryphal traditions reject the idea that the Nephilim simply reappeared by coincidence. Instead, they suggest the knowledge behind their creation survived through the dark passenger of the ark, not necessarily through physical survival alone, but through hidden teachings passed into the post-flood world, knowledge connected to corruption, forbidden power, and the breaking of boundaries established in Genesis. And the Bible itself hints that humanity quickly fell back into rebellion after the flood. Genesis 11 describes the Tower of Babel, another moment when mankind attempted to reach beyond its limits. The pattern repeats again and again. Forbidden ambition, corrupted knowledge, and judgment following close behind. That is what makes the mystery of the dark passenger so disturbing. The flood may have destroyed the ancient world, but according to these traditions, it did not destroy the impulse that created the Nephilim in the first place. That influence continued moving through history, waiting for humanity to open the door once again. According to these ancient traditions, the danger did not end with the flood because the knowledge behind the corruption survived. The influence connected to the Nephilim could appear again whenever humanity pursued forbidden paths. In this interpretation, evil is not only a spiritual force hidden in the mind, it is something capable of reshaping the physical world itself. That idea transforms the meaning of Noah's Ark completely. The flood did not permanently end the struggle between light and darkness. It reset it. Noah stepped into a cleansed world, but the memory of rebellion traveled into the future beside him like a hidden seed waiting for the right moment to grow again. And that leads to the question debated for centuries by Jewish and Christian mystics alike. Did God allow the dark passenger to remain? Genesis 8:21 says, "For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth. Even after judgment, the human condition remained unchanged." the possibility of corruption still existed inside mankind itself. Some ancient interpreters believed this was the true mystery of the Ark. It was not only a vessel of survival, it became a symbol of the entire human condition, light and shadow, existing together within the same fragile world. 8 righteous souls crossed the flood, yet the struggle against corruption crossed with them. That is why the story continues far beyond Noah. From Babel to Canaan, from the Nephilim to the warnings of the prophets, Scripture repeatedly returns to the same theme. Humanity is always standing between obedience and rebellion. And perhaps that is the most unsettling possibility hidden in these ancient texts. The greatest danger after the flood was never outside the ark. It was the reality that the seeds of darkness could survive within humanity itself. Ancient mystics believed the struggle between light and darkness never truly ends. And according to the oldest traditions, the final warning of the ark may be the most disturbing of all. Because according to these forgotten texts, the real battle did not stay in Noah's generation. It continued into every civilization that followed. Some Gnostic traditions described it as an endless cycle woven into human existence itself, a constant conflict between order and corruption, obedience and rebellion. The flood did not erase that conflict. It only revealed how deep it truly runs. The story of the 9th passenger carries a disturbing implication. The greatest danger was never only the beings outside the ark, but the weakness carried within humanity itself. Genesis 8:21 warns, "For the imagination of man's heart is evil from his youth." Even after the waters cleansed the earth, the human heart remained vulnerable to temptation. That is why the dark passenger became such a powerful symbol in ancient interpretations, not merely a hidden creature aboard the ark, but a representation of the silent corruption that follows mankind through every generation. Small compromises, small acts of pride, small steps away from truth that slowly grow into something far darker. And yet Noah's story also carries another message. During the flood, the ark became a place where destruction outside did not control the choices made within. Noah waited for divine instruction before opening the door. He did not act out of fear, panic, or pressure from the darkness surrounding him. That may be the final lesson hidden beneath these ancient traditions. Evil can exist near humanity, tempt humanity, and influence humanity, but it cannot force the choice itself. Deuteronomy 30:19 says, "I have set before you life and death, blessing and cursing. Therefore, choose life." The mystery of the dark passenger endures because it suggests the flood did not completely erase the corruption of the ancient world. According to these forbidden traditions, the influence of those ancient corruptions may still echo through human history even now. The battle between light and darkness did not end in Noah's generation. According to these ancient warnings, it continues in every age and in every human soul.